you check the children?
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego.
I'm Cecil Laird.
And if it please you, join us here for a bit of palaver on Hail to Stephen King. Another special episode, part 2, in our ongoing tier ranking, right, man?
Yes, sir. Yep, there are 5 decades worth of, well, the 5th is not quite a full decade yet, but still 5 different segments worth of books. We got through segment 1 in about a half hour. I'm assuming each one is going to be about the same.
Yeah.
Because you're a long-winded mofo. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, as anybody who has checked out some of the 200 plus episodes of this program, I can just rail off about El Rey for God knows how long. Some of these episodes, they've gone close to an hour. We will not take up that much of your time, but we are in the middle of King's most prolific decade of creativity. So we went from 74 to 83 in the first episode, and this one is going to be 84 onward. And yeah, this is when he was in his prime of creativity, I would contend, and going forward with some of his most iconic work and stuff like that. Although we do begin with a few entries that are less known, first and foremost being the Talisman. And this is when King, for the first time, went full on kind of fantasy adventure of sorts. It's not really a horror book in any way, shape, or form. This is all about Jack Sawyer and him jumping back and forth between our world and another place called the Territories that kind of mirrors our world, but it doesn't really have like the same flow of time and, you know, things of that nature, and it's more of like a medieval place as opposed to our regular world. But he's doing this jumping back and forth because of the fact that his mother is dying of a terminal cancer of sorts, so we assume, and so he is over in this other world trying to find this talisman that can presumably heal her. Interesting thing about this story, though, is the fact that each person in our world, in comparison with over in the Territories, they have like twinners, and that's basically a corresponding person. So his uncle, for instance, his uncle Sloat, on his side of the world, there's he's like a scheming lawyer kind of person trying to take over different finances and all this other stuff. But the Sloat on the other side in the Territories, it's like this scheming evil wizard of sorts, and so. On the other side, to his mother, the corresponding person is a dying queen. And so it is an epic adventure. He gets joined by this werewolf companion named Wolf. And they go on all of these different adventures. He's alone at times. He's accompanied by this friend at times. And this is one that they've been trying to make into a movie for a long time at Amblin Entertainment, actually. And I think it would be perfect for screen. It's a big, sweeping, epic adventure. The fact that it's a young, heroic boy, I mean, that stuff is right up my alley, and really just, it's nostalgic for me. It makes me just recall my own childhood and wanting to go on a big adventure of this ilk myself. It was co-written with Peter Straub, as you see here, and they also did a sequel called Black House many years later. They've been trying to get a third book off the ground, still hasn't happened. This is not quite S tier for me because it is a little long-winded. It's over 600 pages, if I'm not mistaken, and some of the stuff doesn't work as well as other bits. So like Jack becomes an indentured servant at one particular point for this guy who runs this this bar. And he finally escapes, and then there's another time where he's stuck in this religious group home, and he's trying to escape from that. And so it does drag at times with all of these different adventures, and then there's little interludes and whatnot. But so this is definitely an A for me. But whereas some people hold it in this immense high regard, some people think this is like one of the absolute like top 5 best. And if you feel that way,
wow, really,
totally.
I never hear anyone talking about it.
No, it's definitely one of those under the radars because of the fact that it's never been adapted. But those who have read it are
That's interesting. Even up till now, it's got to be in production.
We heard some stuff about it around 6 months ago. Entertainment Weekly did an update about it 6-8 months ago, something like that, because originally they were going to shift it to TV and do a series on TNT, and then they've decided to do a theatrical instead. There's a lot of material, though, so I worry what they would condense, what they would omit, but it's tailor-made for screen, it has its Mark Twain kind of parallels and stuff. That was very deliberately what they were doing, you know, kind of the Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer sort of bit, and it ties in with the tower too, you know. So it's some of the world building as far as just this destroyed other medieval world that has moved on of sorts, that has slow mutants and all this different stuff. It ties in directly with the tower mythology, and the sequel Black House, where we encounter a grown-up Jack Sawyer, ties in even more with Dark Tower stuff, with
We'll get there.
breakers and all that. But yes, the Talisman is an A for me, not quite an S, it's just below that. But yes, if you guys have never read it, it's a little long in the tooth, that's why it's an A as opposed to an S, but nonetheless it's awesome. The Talisman, everyone.
Next one is the first fantasy book I ever heard of Stephen King even having anything to do with, Eyes of the Dragon.
Yeah, Eyes of the Dragon is whereas the Talisman, you know, it ties in with our world and then jumps into a medieval world. The Eyes of the Dragon is complete 100% that medieval fantasy, and so kind of a Lord of the Rings. Although, you know, this is much more so. It's more so a YA kind of book. I guess he's gone on record to say that he wrote this specifically for his daughter, and it's much more simple in its prose, but it has terrific illustrations if you're able to track down the hardcover, as you see the picture for right there. This is not top tier or anything, but it is a very simple and engaging story. You have a different version of Randall Flagg in this as a scheming wizard, which is really cool. And so this is where, especially for the more hardcore CRs, you start to realize, you're like, wow, a lot of these King things tie in, and this actually, the realm of Delane, I believe it is, where this story takes place, is mentioned in the Dark Tower book 4.5. And so that's when you start to realize, oh wait, these worlds connect. They're all in the same plane of existence and stuff, which is fun. It's essentially a story about the boy who was meant to be king being charged with his father's murder because Flagg does some scheming, and then the younger brother becomes king and is easily manipulated by Flagg, and the older brother, accused of murdering the king, is put in this tower, and he's trying to find the means of escape. And that's really the simplicity of the story, but it's a fun one. Not an S or an A or anything, but it's definitely a very strong B. It's probably a B+, but at the end of the day, I can't rise it above the rank of B.
Okay.
It's one that I think would be a terrific television series as well, because there's so much you could expand as far as different characters and lore, and it's actually in development currently on the Sci-Fi Channel for a series, which is fun. So
well, okay, after Blood Drive, I can forgive.
Maybe, right?
I can forgive certain things going to Sci-Fi.
Yeah.
Next up is Thinner.
Great adaptation by Tom Holland. No, not Spider-Man. Tom Holland, the director.
Child's
Play and Fright Night. So there was a very great adaptation of this. And this is another Bachman book that it's not as mean-spirited as some of the early Bachman stuff. This was actually the book where Stephen King was finally outed as being Richard Bachman. Was around
really?
the time that this came out. Somebody went, a very ambitious journalist went and checked out in the Library of Congress and saw, oh, the Bachman stuff is under Stephen King, and so on and so forth. So he went public with it, and King in turn had to reveal very begrudgingly that he was in fact Richard Bachman. But this was the first Bachman book that was actually selling very well, and people didn't even know it was King just yet. So he had finally accomplished what he had always set out to do with the Bachman name, was to see if he could sell based on his writing merits as opposed to his name and his notoriety. Another simple story. This is about a lawyer who accidentally runs over a old gypsy woman after a night of celebration, after closing a big case with his wife, and he gets cursed, and in turn he starts losing weight at a rapid rate, and it turns into him trying to investigate these gypsies, and he finds out that other people besides him are cursed as well, including the judge who got him off on the murder case, and I believe the head police chief who had a hand in it as well. He had all these lawyerly connections, and they kind of pulled some strings, and he ended up getting acquitted for the murder of this gypsy, and so that's why the curse has gone down, and he finds out the nastiness of some of the other curses, and he employs Janelli, I believe is the character's name, and he's this gangster dude who he ended up helping out many years before. He's like, dude, come to my assistance, let's track down these gypsies. And it turns into kind of a bonkers action shoot-'em-up of sorts at one particular point. But this is a really fun story. You've seen the movie, obviously, if you're doing the thinner. Mm-hmm. It's a very accurate representation. I mean, solid solid adaptation by Tom Holland. This is a great Bachman story. This is a very solid B. It's one of the better Bachmans, and I dig the hell out of this story. It's another very short one, you know. It's like barely 300 pages, I think, and so it's a brisk read. You could do it in a couple evenings, or if you're a really ambitious, speedy reader, you know, I mean, you could do it in a day. So, you know, Thinner is a very solid B. Dig it.
Okay. And that is going to lead to another one that a lot of people know.
Indeed, the reason for the King-assance, the return of the king, as I put it. We have one of his most epic and ambitious books that he has ever written. We have it, simply. In 2017, when Andy Muschietti was redoing this, we probably saw the biggest growth ever on our channel. I still think that first trailer reaction is one of the most viewed things on the channel, aside from like Twisty at Comic-Con or something. Yeah. So yeah, it's one that helped us grow, helped put us on the map more so. It's been adapted twice, technically 3 times if you consider the fact that the newest version was broken up into 2 separate parts. But
4.
If you the fact that there was an a lengthy Indian adaptation as well that we were talking about right before we got on camera for this. So this is definitely an S. But this is an S that is behind The Stand and Pet Sematary. But the nice thing for me is that I can just I don't have to choose which I prefer. Nope. Even if this book is just so epic, and even in the adaptations that we've had, there's still so much omitted in just the additional history about Derry and all the stuff that's gone down there. They probably should have done a Derry TV series instead of a Castle Rock series, because there's so much they could have adapted in a fascinating fashion. If I was to put some of these S's above one another, the thing that it just bothers me is the GB, the scene at the very end that I still don't think King can explain that away. It was a very weird bit of storytelling, but I mean, it's still such a sprawling, epic, awesome book with so much nuance and so much detail. I adore it, and it is 100% an S story and deserving of its reputation.
The next is the next chapter in the Dark Tower, yes?
Yes, indeed. The Drawing of the Three, which Catherine's actually reading right now, which is funny. I finally got her on that trip. But yeah, this is a Dark Tower entry that I get a lot of flack for not loving as much as a few other ones. I believe it's a bit long in the tooth, and I'm not as big on the Dark Tower stuff that takes place in our world. I prefer when they're in Midworld, when they're in that fantasy world that has moved on, like a combination of, you know, post-medieval with some fantasy, you know, sci-fi-ness and whatnot. Eddie Dean's a terrific character. Odetta is interesting, you know, who becomes Susanna, Odetta, Susanna. The stuff with Jack Mort is fine. The body jumping is cool enough. Lobstrosities, yay. But without spoiling much, this is just one that's never really done it for me. It's another one that feels more like world building in a lot of ways. The actual drawing of these characters that become the new Ka-Tet. There's a lot of constant readers who this is their favorite Dark Tower book. It's not for me. I'm not going to go as far as saying it's a C, but it's definitely a B for me. It's one of the lesser Dark Tower entries, and it's not one that I enjoy returning to.
You can make it a C if you think it deserves a C.
No, it's not. It's not quite a C. It has its merits enough, and I know I see we're getting a little long in the tooth in the B's, but yeah, this is definitely. Well, you know what? Yeah, you know.
If you put a median line down the middle, would you say it's above or below the median line?
It's like a C plus B minus, you know, and
so it really rides that line for you.
Yeah. Oh, it does. It does.
Well, we'll keep it at a B, and if you want to go back and change it at some point, or what do you think?
I think I think it has to slip down just a little bit. Okay. Yeah, I do.
Do you, which of these books do you think it belongs with?
Serious hell about this.
Do you think it belongs up here with these, or do you think it belongs down here with these?
I'm gonna get some crap for saying I like Eyes of the Dragon more than Drawing of the Three, but I do. I like Thinner more than Drawing of the Three as far as mobster stuff goes, because there's a heavy mobster influence in the Eddie Dean story.
I don't like that stuff either. So
I'm not so big into it, but I mean, Thinner doesn't have it, like Thinner has it for just that one segment, you know, that one chunk of the book. But then I guess it's in chunk of this one. I don't know, man. Let's just move on as opposed to me overanalyzing this. So
next up is Misery.
This is one of the most notorious adaptations based on the Kathy Bates performance, but the book is even more brutal in a lot of ways. That iconic scene wasn't a sledgehammer. It was an axe. Dude,
really?
Dude lost his legs.
Oh, Jesus.
In that segment. It is far more brutal. And also the additional backstory stuff that you get a little more so about just what Annie Wilkes was doing as a younger girl and stuff. I mean, yeah, we get so much more information that Paul Sheldon, discovers about her in this particular book, and you get actual passages of the misery book that he's writing, which is fascinating and stuff. And I also like the missing letter, because the typewriter that she gives him has that issue, and so they're all being filled in with the little scribble and stuff. This is probably an A, I gotta say, as far as it was originally supposed to be a Bachman book, and since his identity was revealed, before this publication, and it is one of the more mean-spirited ones. He talked at one point about the original ending that he had for this, which was where Annie Wilkes gets mad and feeds Paul Sheldon to her pig, which is really, it was going to be much darker, but I'm assuming that's back when it was a Bachman book. When it became a King book, you need that silver lining, as he's so fond of. But yeah, this is a story with both the Rob Reiner adaptation and the original print material. It's got that esteem for a reason. It's one of his best in this decade, I would say.
Okay. Next up is the Tommyknockers.
Tommyknockers. This is one that I know there's a lot of people that would put this one a lot lower, and I am gonna get major flack for this because of the fact that all those Dark Tower apologists, or Dark Tower 2 apologists, are gonna be like, how can you put the Tommyknockers above Dark Tower 2? But Tommyknockers for me is a B. It's one that it is B for bloated, because it was the last book that King wrote when he was still hopped up on different stuff, and it was around the time of this publication that people were his family and friends had his little intervention of sorts, and they showed his trash to him, and there's empty Coke vials and half-smoked joints and beer cans and all this different stuff. So over the course of a day of writing, he was just doing all kinds of different stuff, and hopped up every which way. It's a book that probably needs some serious trimming, and it is being adapted once again, produced by James Wan. It's going to be a feature film this time, as opposed to the Jimmy Smits TV series. You saw that one, right? Way back in the day?
Nope.
Wow, it's not good. Tracy Lords, Jimmy Smits.
I think I must have watched it at some point. Yeah, but I don't remember it at all.
Yeah, but I do love the relationship between Bobby and Guard. Guard is one of my favorite Stephen King characters. He is a flawed poet that was obviously a manifestation of King himself, a drunk doing all kinds of dumb stuff in public settings, trying to turn his life around, failing miserably. I like when King tackles sci-fi, this being a story about, Bobby, this Western writer up in northern Maine, and she comes across this weird rock when she's out, kind of walking around on her plot of land, and she starts digging it up, and turns out it's this big alien spaceship that starts taking control of the town over the course of the story, and they all become under the control of the alien presence that is still very much alive on this ship. Yes, it needed some editing, it needed some trimming, and King has gone on record to say he really doesn't like this book, but I personally do, especially upon repeated readings. It's one that I really, really dig, and probably more so I have just that preference for when King tackles sci-fi, and he does it so infrequently. But yeah, this is one that I do put above Christine, or a Cujo, or dare I say, Dark Tower 2, because that's what people are going to ream me the most in the comments for this. So there you have it, everybody. That's I contend the Tommyknockers is indeed a BZ.
All right, then that leads us to the Dark Half.
Dark Half, adapted for the screen by none other than George A. Romero, who one of the most prestigious and honoring opportunities that I had on this channel was getting the chance to speak to him at one point many years ago at Scarefest. One of my favorite moments working with this gentleman beside me. The movie is decent enough, and it's very much allegorical in the whole Bachman reveal aspect, and the fact that our main character in this, he is a writer who has not really seen much esteem and success with the work published under his own name, but he certainly has, writing about George Stark, this just hard-nosed criminal in these hard-boiled crime thriller novels of sorts. And so it is revealed that he is in fact this other author, and lo and behold, yep, he has to reveal his true identity, and it's a book that's maybe a little too meta at times for me, and I do like meta storytelling, but this one, it's never done it for me as much as it has others, and just the whole manifestation of a fake character coming to life and then terrorizing this writer and his family and a couple friends and colleagues and stuff like that. Like, it goes after his publicist and his an editor and a manager and the person who shot this fake graveyard scene of the death of this character. It's not that good, man. It's still better than most writers because it's Cy King, but for me it's a C. It's definitely of that lower territory, and it's not a D, definitely not, because there are some very intriguing passages about just evil and how it can manifest itself. Like, if I don't know, evil being able to become reality based on just the force of the writing behind it. And I mean, there's interesting kind of peering into the mind of just having a dark half and a dark side within you, tapping into it for creative purposes. So it's not without interesting merit, and it's definitely King. It's King writing about himself and just that evil of sorts that he taps into to create. So that's fascinating, but it's just never, as far as, our villain and what goes down with him and the writer, captivated me that much. So,
Okay.
The Dark Half.
Next one is book 3 of The Dark Tower.
So this is when The Dark Tower gets really good, in my opinion. So this one, yes, like book 2, it delves into both our world and Midworld. So there is some jumping back and forth, and the reemergence of Jake and bringing him back in as the last member of drawing of that Ka-Tet. So after finally getting Susanna and Eddie Dean, we finally get to pull Jake into this world. But I mean, you've got fighting the robotic bear Shardek, you've got all the stuff at Lud, which is fantastic. You've got the TikTok man. You've got the reemergence of Flag at the end of the book. My life for you. So there's just so much dope stuff in this. This is where the core of our Ka-Tet and our crew has finally taken form. And while I don't hold it as high as the book that comes thereafter, Wizard and Glass, this is my second favorite of the Dark Tower entries, but it does kind of take a little bit of time to find its footing early on before Jake is drawn, and when he's trying to find his way out of his New York and into Midworld and opening up of that door and the monster that's in that strange house and stuff. So this is an A. It's not quite an S. I mean, which one's going to be an S, and it's coming in the next decade. But yes, this is my second favorite Dark Tower book. The Wastelands is captivating. It's awesome. And just the scene of just with Gasher, I believe, where he's kidnapped Jake and they're going through just those lower mazes of Lud. That is just such awesome storytelling. I love this book, but there's just another Dark Tower book and a few other King books that I love more. So there you go.
Okay. Next up is Needful Things.
Yes, the alleged last Castle Rock story, but it ended up being the last Castle Rock novel, really, until we got the novella that was Elevation, and then there were a couple shorts here and there. But this is one that had a solid enough adaptation with Ed Harris as Sheriff Pangborn and a few other stars. The performance of Leland Gaunt in this, he's one of my favorite Cy King villains. You've seen this movie, right? The movie adaptation of Needful Things. Yeah, it's
Max von Sydow.
Yes, that's the actor's name that I was looking for. He is terrific as Leland, and the story, it's not going to be upper echelon because of the fact that I do think it's a little long in the tooth, and there's very, very similar to like what I said about Salem's Lot. It's one where you have so many different characters and rivalries that you're trying to keep track of, and that's what Leland does, is he pulls the puppet strings and he gets these people that already have tension killing each other. They play tricks, and then in turn playing tricks turns into maiming and significant violence and in some cases death. But it's a fascinating character study about the lengths that people will go to obtain something that they feel like they need and that they desire. And the fact that Gaunt is this is one that I would love to see either a prequel to, a sequel to, or even a remake of the film. I think it's been long enough. It's been around 20 years at this particular point, and I dig this story, but it's not an A or an S. It's a very solid B for me, and so that's the thing. Most of the stuff in the 90s for me with King is going to be of the B to C variety. I feel like he was trying to find his way a little bit with the post-sobriety writing. Once he actually got off the sauce, off the shizzle, and this is one that it's just there's a lot going on, a lot to keep track of, and I don't love this one, but I do really dig it. So that's why it gets a B.
Next up is Gerald's Game.
Gerald's Game is one that finally saw its adaptation. Props to Mike Flanagan. I feel like that has made people seek out this book more so than ever before. It was one that was considered unfilmable because of the fact that so much takes place in our lead's head, but he was able to masterfully do it, including the flashback scenes to all this stuff with this and the corresponding book we're going to talk about in a moment, Dolores Claiborne. Oh boy, this is, once again, the King stuff in the mid-90s. It veers between the B and the C for me. I do really dig this book, but in some ways I might actually like the adaptation better. There's that iconic scene with the handcuffs. You all know the one that we're talking about. While it's good on the printed page, I feel like some of the condensing and some of the just retrofitting that Flanagan did, the film is a very solid B for me. The book is a C though. It's a very solid C plus, but it's very good. I can't say it's great, but it's where King was trying new things. This was around the time where he was writing from the female perspective a whole lot more, and he was just trying to approach from a different perspective, because he had done so much and about writers and about kids and all this different stuff. I mean, to write from the perspective of a woman who finds herself trapped in a cabin in the middle of nowhere with a dead husband and handcuffed to a bed. Terrific concept, decent execution, but I do think, just like with Dr. Sleep, actually, I prefer the Flanagan film more, but the book is still very good and worth seeking out. It's a solid C+.
All right, and finally for this decade, we have Dolores Claiborne.
Dolores Claiborne. Another great performance from Kathy Bates, returning to the Kingverse for this film. She starred opposite Jennifer Jason Leigh as her daughter. That was another one that was produced by Castle Rock Entertainment, Rob Reiner's company. That was behind many Stephen King adaptations, including Stand By Me and various others. This is definitely one where, while I enjoy the film, have you seen the Dolores Claiborne film before?
Long time ago.
Long time ago, yeah. It's more so a sequel of sorts to the book than just the actual initial text itself. The text is really just basically our title character, Dolores Claiborne, talking and just giving her statement in the midst of interrogation at the police station, and it's just told completely from her perspective. The audiobook is actually better in this case because of the fact that it's just like sitting and pressing play and listening to her give her very, very lengthy statement and tell the story. This is another one, though, that for me, I know this is top 10 for a lot of constant readers. This is one that veers very similar to Gerald's Game and Dolores Claiborne for me as being a B or a C, but it's another one where I think it has to be, if I'm putting Gerald's Game as a C, this also has to be a C, because these books are linked. They are linked by that eclipse and by two nasty daddy things going down with their daughters that they correlate and correspond and are happening at the same time. And so, I can't put one or the other above. They are books that are intrinsically linked, and both feature strong female characters, which I appreciate, which with not our very next book, but 2 books later in our next episode. So yeah, those books are kind of twinners in their regard, so I have to group them together, unfortunately. And if you're like, hey, how can you put Tommyknockers and Needful Things and Thinner and stuff like that above those? As I said earlier, guys, I prefer when there's some sort of otherworldly, supernatural, something bigger happening. And while I really respect when King veers into the more grounded, down-to-earth territory like you have in Gerald's Game and Dolores Claiborne, that's why I put those other books in this particular video ahead, and why, the last 2 that we mentioned here are just a little bit behind. So Another one in the books, man. This was fun.
Indeed.
It's fun getting to the chance to get at least whatever insight possible from you and
Not much, but all right.
forge forward. And thanks for the assist on the technical side of things here.
Of course. Thought I'd let's if we're gonna do this, let's do it right. So
Damn rizzle.
if you guys enjoyed the video, click the like button and subscribe down below. You can click that notification bell, turn it to all to make sure you don't miss the Hail to Stephen King's, where we continue these. And I'm not sure whether we will have done it by now or whether we are just still planning to record it by the time this one airs, but we are planning to do one of these live, probably the Stephen King short story collections we'll do live.
Yeah.
And then next episode we'll be back to do decade 94 to 03.
Rougher patch, unfortunately, but forge forward with us. We will greatly appreciate it, everybody. So I extend the grande gracias, Saben Jaime Fuego, all social media sectors, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I've got my own YouTube called Infuegotainment, where I do non-horror stuff. If you have any inclination, jump over there. It's greatly appreciated. But make sure to share this video, tag the horror show, use say Tale to Stephen King as well, spread the word. Constant readers, El Rey lovers. So until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, Cinemigos, constant readers and viewers alike, say thank you. I'm hopeful we share more of this palaver sooner rather than later. And until then, remember,
Stay scared.
and read Stephen King.